Thank you again for joining me here on Narissa and Beconcealed, where we talk about higher consciousness onto the planet. And here we have Randy Troyer, who is located in Utah, and I'm here in Denver, Colorado. And thank you again for joining me here and really discussing on your life's journey as a entrepreneur and dive into areas of spirituality. If you tell us about yourself and how you started your in the field of your expertise.
Okay. I was born in 1996 in Lebanon, Oregon. Born there, and I lived there for about 3 years. Our family lived there for about 3 years. And then our family moved over to Idaho, actually, for 3 years. And then we moved back to Oregon, and I lived there for pretty much the rest of my existence. Here in January of 2025, I actually moved with my wife and my two kids. We moved from Oregon to Saratoga Springs, Utah. And growing up, I don't know exactly like how deep I want to go here, but basically, like a lot of like my growing up years was riddled with family problems, strife in relationships, and things like that. And I know that a lot of that came from previous generations and some of the way that my parents were treated and the way that I guess maybe they saw the world. And but I just grew up in a very, very troubled young man. I really did not get along with my dad at all, which I feel is like fairly common for young men. But my mom, I really, really felt very, very connected to her. And I think that it was just like she saw a lot of like my potential. She saw a lot of like what I was interested in, the things that I really, really enjoyed doing. She not only acknowledged them, but she also somewhat encouraged them. And for a little bit of context, kind of like the setting that I was born into was a very, very conservative Christian setting. And some of the things that I really, really struggled with growing up, and even at a very young age, like I can remember this back to like 4, 5 years old, is like one of the things that we were taught is like you don't put a show on for anybody. Like entertaining people is kind of like a bad thing to do. Like you shouldn't try to be in the spotlight. You shouldn't try to be uh, kind of like the center of attention, so to speak. But even at a very, very young age, like I would say like I was a natural born storyteller, and I loved to entertain people by either telling stories, by showing off, by just like having a good time, joking around. And that was just kind of like who I was and like what I absolutely love to do. Like I just love to make people laugh. I love to see people having a good time, and I love to be like one of the reasons why they were having such a good time. I can't really remember much of Oregon before we moved over to Idaho, but like when we moved over to Idaho, my dad started his own construction company, and him and his brother went into business together. And I know that they both worked really, really hard at like getting this company off the ground. But that all that being said, like finances were really, really tight at that point in life, and I just saw just kind of like the stress and the I, I guess you could call it pain that like financial pressure brought to like my parents. I saw the way that that affected my dad's relationship with my mom, and the way that money pressure and stuff like that affected his relationship with us kids as well. Growing up, like I really could not stand my dad, and probably one of the biggest reasons why was because I was somebody that didn't necessarily just love the outdoors. I didn't necessarily want to go out and run around and swim and do all that type of stuff. I did because I was, that was just kind of like the way that we did life, and that's what our parents made us do. And I'm grateful that they did make me do that. But at the same time, like I was always trying to sneak back into the house and, play video games or something like that. Like that's what I wanted to do. And like my dad absolutely hated video games or like us spending time on a computer or anything like that. And so like we were always butting heads when it came to those things. And so I was always kind of like sneaking around trying to do these things, and he was always trying to get me outside, go mow the lawn, go play in the sandbox, go do something outside, go swimming, go ride bike, whatever that is. We were just always. I never would stand up to him and defy him because I would get punished for that. But behind the scenes, I was always trying to sneak around. My mom, on the other hand, was a little bit more lenient with some of that stuff. Like she grew up with computers and like technology and stuff like that. She was definitely more open to us spending time on the computers and things like that. Um, and so, I whenever I wanted permission to go play on the computer or something or play video games, like I would always ask my mom, would never ask dad. And just with all of that being said, like I wouldn't say that I was just like I wouldn't say that I just spent a lot of time or really thought about being like kind of just a sad child, or like I wouldn't say that I really thought that I had like a really bad upbringing. And it's, in comparison to a lot of other people, I don't think it was a bad type of upbringing, but I definitely see areas that maybe my parents could have done better in certain areas. And like, I want to do that for my kids because I know one thing that has really showed to me, like just with the example that my mom gave me, is like, everybody has certain interests or certain things that they're good at or that they're interested in, or like I would see as like their calling, things that they were put on this earth to do. There's obviously like, or I believe like there's tasks, there's things that they need to do while they're here because that's just, the way that God made them. And so just with like my mom's example, like she really taught me to see that in people and to be okay if people are a little bit different than you, or maybe you know um, maybe you don't necessarily agree with them, or maybe your calling is completely different. It doesn't make anybody less important. And so that's kind of like what I grew up with. And in Oregon, kind of becoming a teenager, um, that was kind of when like I really started to feel like really empty inside. I really didn't have. I had maybe one really good friend in high school um, that I was really close to. He ended up not going all the way through school, and so about uh, eighth, ninth grade, somewhere in there, like I was just kind of stuck on my own. Like I had formed a really close bond with this one friend, and he left the community. Like he didn't go to school anymore. He didn't go to the same church as I went to, and he just kind of disappeared out of my life for a while. And that was like a really hard time for me because at school, I'm sure you remember what high school is like. There's all these little cliques, and all of these people have their own friends. And I would try to join other friend groups, and I would try to be friends with this person and that person. But I feel like there was a lot of effort that I put into trying to build those friendships, but they never really went anywhere because those people were happy with the friends that they already had. They were happy with their friend groups, and I was kind of the guy on the outside trying to break into that. And so I I started to form like some of these beliefs of like um like nobody wants to be friends with me because I've tried 5 or 6 times to make friends with all of these different people and kind of get the stay in your lane type of attitude from these people. And um, just naturally, like I do like being around people. Like I said, I love to entertain. I love to tell stories, and I love to have a good time with other people. And so just, upper teens, it was just kind of a really, really lonely part of my life. I was still involved at the church at some level. I was involved with like a youth group at some level, but I was just kind of like one of these guys that was on the outside of the in group, so to speak. Anyway, during that time, I got out of school. I didn't go to college. I just went into the workforce, which there in Oregon it mainly consists of either something to do with the agricultural industry or the construction industry. Those two are really, really big in that part of Oregon. And so that's what I did. My grandpa owned an agricultural business, like a grass seed warehouse, because they grow a lot of grass seed for either like forage, agriculture, like pastures for animals, things like that, or they'll grow it for like people's lawns or turf or stuff like that. And so I worked at this company for approximately, I think it was about 7.5 years total. I worked for this company. And um, there was a year in there that I actually helped out at a school, a local Christian private school. I actually helped out. It was during the COVID year where we were. It was actually legal for us to keep the school open, and some of the staff didn't necessarily agree with the stance the school took, and so they just resigned, or they just said that they weren't going to teach, and there was a vacancy there that needed to be filled. And it just so happened that they quit about 2 or 3 weeks before the school year started, and all of a sudden they need somebody to be like a homeroom teacher, or like teach math and teach grammar to middle schoolers. And so I actually stepped into that job because um, I never really struggled with school. I was pretty good at school, and also I like people. I like being around people, and I like to teach things as well. And so I stepped into that, and that was like probably at that point in my life, it was one of the most growing experiences that I ever had. Just to show up to the schoolhouse, and things went really, really rough for the first half of that school year because I had no former training in teaching or anything like that. And so it was just kind of like dumped into this job and just like figure it out. But like during that year, like I grew so, so much because, I was teaching seventh and eighth graders. And I learned one of the things that I learned very well in that school year was I learned how to communicate. Because I don't know if you've dealt with a lot of like seventh and eighth grade, um, like that age group of children, but when you say something to 12 different people, let's just say, they're going to take it 12 different ways. And so being clear, being concise, being like explaining things more than once and getting very, very clear on like what you mean, not just what you said, what you mean. Like I learned a lot of skills in that area over that school year. And I also learned about like relationships and stuff like that, because obviously when you're teaching, you're dealing with a lot of people. And so that was a very, very growing experience. I did not go back the next year and teach again. I went back to the grass seed warehouse job that I had, and um, was back into that job for another year or so. And then I actually went and started a video production company for myself. And I was kind of pushed into it because my job at the grass seed warehouse was actually going away. And so they basically told me, hey, we know that maybe you're not necessarily just like thrilled with your job here. And so like if you would want to leave, or if you don't want to go start your own company, or if you'd want to go do something else, like now would be a good time to leave. They told me like we really like the work that you do, and if you want to stay, we'll try to find something for you to do, but if you want to leave, like now would be the time to leave. And growing up, like I just always felt like um like, I don't want to sound egotistical or like I'm trying to thump my chest or pat myself on the back, but there's like something different about me. There's something different than the people that I went to school with or went to church with. And I just never really felt comfortable or at peace while working a regular job. And so like entrepreneurship like was always there as something that I wanted to do, but I just never took the step and went to do it because like if I think back to those early years of like dad starting his own company, like that was really hard and it it was very difficult for him and it affected relationships and like he never made a lot of money from that company and just all of this debt for buying equipment and stuff. Like it was just like entrepreneurship was something that I wanted to do, but I just thought that it was something that's going to be very, very hard to get started in doing. And there is a lot to learn with entrepreneurship, with starting your own company, with starting your own business, but it's not very hard to get started. Like that is actually a lot easier than most people think. And that's something that I wish that I knew years ago. And it's something that I try to tell a lot of people now is it's actually not as hard as you think to get started. And that is really the first step to building something that you're proud of is just getting started. And so I started a video production company. I knew nothing about entrepreneurship and I dove into that and I just struggled so bad in that whole in the whole entrepreneurship, running a business, trying to start a business and generate leads and close those leads, sales, being professional, fulfillment, all those things. Like it was a lot to learn. And ultimately, like that business didn't actually last. I started it in 2022, and then maybe a couple of months ago, like when we're recording this, a couple of months ago, I actually shut the business down for good, took the website down, and just kind of just let it go. And that was just kind of like inexperience. But since 2022 and starting my business, like I've gone through so much turmoil, I guess you could say, in so many different areas of my life with like because of like entrepreneurship or like starting your own business. Like there's a lot of things that I had to learn about myself, and I alluded to some of those before. Like the belief like nobody wants to be my friend or like nobody wants to talk to me. That does not serve you when you're trying to go out and find new clients, because if you just expect everybody to kind of push you off to the side and like ignore you or like not want to be your friend, if you expect people to do that, more than likely they are going to do that. And so there was just a lot of those beliefs that kept coming up and kept coming up. And really, I look at my first business that I started, I look at that as kind of a gift from God. It was something that crashed and burned ultimately, but what it taught me about myself was invaluable, and I wouldn't go back and redo it. I wouldn't go back and not start my business now because there's a lot of things that I was holding inside. There's a lot of things, there's a lot of pent up anger, resentment. There's a lot of things about myself that I just didn't know. And if I wouldn't have started my business, if I wouldn't have taken that step, like I don't think I ever would have actually learned those things about myself. And so I see that even if it looks like a mistake to most people, it was a success in my eyes just because it taught me so much. And so now, 2025, January 1, we actually decided to move to Utah because I was ready for a change. I just wanted to move to a new community. I kind of wanted the challenge of like getting to know people in a new community and like getting started from fresh. Like I knew maybe 5 people in this area where we moved to. And so we were just basically starting fresh. basically we had to find a place to live, we had to find a new church, we had to find all these different things. And like the challenge of that was definitely very, very appealing to me. And so we moved down here, and I actually work in financial services now. I do a lot of like education and helping people understand like personal finance and ultimately helping them make the best decisions for themselves and their families. Now, in the midst of all that, I actually got married in 2018. We had a son in 2020, and then a daughter in 2023. And so I do have a family. I guess I did not include that so much in my story, but I did want to just like put that out there because, that adds a whole nother level of pressure, especially when your finances are tight. And it's all been very, very good for me. And it all made me grow so much as a person. And one thing that I will say as well is like a real big wake up call for me in this whole entrepreneurial journey was, I started my own business. I invested a bunch of money. I was trying to make this thing work and it wasn't working. And I was getting frustrated and I was getting angry. And I started acting a lot like my dad did when he had his company. And like that was something that pained me like a lot. Like now I'm treating my wife like that and I'm treating my kids like that. It's not something I'm proud of, but it is something that I did acknowledge and something that I do acknowledge and something that I work on every day is just trying to be a better man, trying to be someone that can lead a family effectively, and just trying to be the dad to my kids, the husband to my wife that my dad wasn't necessarily at that point in his life.
Well, I was in listening to your story, there's a lot of information there that you had provided when it comes to those who are starseed, old soul, and the process that they go through is the same thing, especially in the teenage puberty section of our life in our chapter, where we feel as if we have a mission, we have a goal, we have some type of calling, that there's that pull that in the direction where we need to go, but we don't know how to reach that. We just understand the vision in some form, in some way. And then, like, no family is perfect when it comes to the upbringing of it, and it's, and as we end up being adults and seeing how we don't want to be like our parent, and to really pass that on to a higher way of doing it differently is really transforming. And it's beautiful and that you're able to see that. And it's and I understand, like, when it comes to the awakening process and understanding that and how it looks like in the journey of discovering what your destiny is, and as a soul, and how to become a better individual and a better man and God. It really also resonates with a lot of other individuals who have gone in that process, that we aren't alone in this journey of self-discovery, of learning what we can do better to make a better impact in the world. And so, touching into spirituality, at what point in your life, was it more in your teenage, high school, seventh, eighth grade, that you discovered more that we are more than just human beings on this planet, that there's other dimensions, and uh, what angle of reality did you touch upon?
Oh man, that's a good question. I feel like I was taught that we were more than just human beings, or like there was more than just the physical going on. Um, but I don't necessarily know if I really, really like understood like what that means or like what implications that actually has for my life until maybe I would say within the last 3 to 4 years, honestly. Um, like I said, growing up as part of a very, very conservative Christian church, and so the whole thing of like self discovery was something that you didn't necessarily do. Like you don't listen to your heart, you don't listen to kind of like the deep longings within like your soul, so to speak. There's You don't listen to those things because like the Bible does say like the heart is deceitful and desperately wicked, right? And so like they would quote those verses and say like you shouldn't listen to yourself, you shouldn't think about yourself, you shouldn't think about like maybe you shouldn't even think about like your higher calling, so to speak. Like if you feel called, maybe you should look into it, but like that's not something that they spend a lot of time teaching. And so like I love talking about that stuff. I love diving into that stuff now, and it's something that I want to help other people with now is finding that. Because like for me, I knew that there was something more that I need to do, but I didn't know what it was because nobody like first of all, people taught me I shouldn't be looking into like self-discovery, right? Like, why did God make me? Why am I here? What is my job? What is it? What are those things that I like to do, the things that closely align with me on a deep soul level? And I feel like, entertaining people or being a friend to other people, being a leader in some respect, I feel like that really, really does align on a deep soul level with me. But just growing up, it was kind of like, nah, don't think about that stuff. Don't really pursue that stuff. Like, here is the way that you should live your life. Here's about 5 different occupations that are um, acceptable to this community, to this church, and like anything outside of that is, yeah, maybe you can do it, but like we recommend staying in this lane right here. And so it wasn't until somebody kind of introduced the idea and like took me through some of the process of the whole self-discovery journey that I really started to get, diving into that and seeing that, I me personally, I believe that we need to glorify God with everything that is in us. And I feel like we can't do that. Like we do not have the ability to do that unless we know why we were created in the first place. And I think that the best way to find that out is to find the things that do closely align with us on a soul level and to pursue those things, to nurture those things, and to ultimately use that for the greater good of society and to glorify God.
Yeah, definitely agree with what you're saying there. The self-discovery process is different for everybody. And your journey when you are going into the video formatting field of building that business, you're able to, the process that you went through, it woke up a deeper level of you that was flourishing and becoming new, that you were embracing, to realize that you are more than what you can provide here, that you can actually tap on those abilities and pass on the the talents that you have, and this self-discovery. And then in the financial field and the educational part, that's where we stand as a star seed old soul, that based on the studies that I've gone through at this one university for about half my life, and then also growing up as a Roman Catholic, but then my guide informed me to get away from religion. It was more of, because religion is not for everybody. For us who are starseed and old soul, who are in the other dimensions of reality, religion can only go so far until we step out of it to really grow into other aspects of ourselves and discovering. I mean, there's religion overall doesn't matter what type of religion we're in, as long as we're, carrying that truth, any religion will become the true religion. But going back to the starseed aspect of it, that growing process and wanting to give, it's a higher way of this reality that we're stuck in already in that awakening process, and because of that awakening process, you're able to draw on other individuals into your circles who have that type of mindset. And so based on the studies that I went through at this one university, and also going forward, because that university was unaccredited, it was non-traditional. The way they taught was more on the religion and science as one, metaphysics, alchemy of life. And then I went to a accredited university that was 4 years, that was leaned more towards on the more traditional aspect of life, but still outside the box of unboxing God. And so it ties in, really touching in on one's points of how to discover your destiny in your relationship with self and the creator, and building those connections with your circles, especially the family that you're bringing and connected with. And so touching on spirituality when it comes to the angle of like the awakening process of trying to discover your tribe, you start to discover who your relations are in an internal way, that there's this fine line of the believing and the knowing. It's like without a doubt, or you get answers like in your intuition part. So in your process, as you were saying, you had just discovered it within these last 3 years. How did you awaken to that? What was the first sign that you realized that it was actually a journey that you want to keep pursuing and dive deeper?
Does that relate to like this personal spiritual aspect, or like what I'm doing for work? Or I guess those two are pretty closely tied together too, or at least
Yeah,
they are for me.
yeah.
Um,
Start with the spiritual aspect of it, and then discovering that process as you're learning what your destiny calling is.
um, I actually took a course online. It wasn't just a course; it was like there's a mentorship that came with it as well, and it had a lot to do with um, emotional stuff, and obviously growing up, I was not emotionally healthy, and I was carrying a lot of that with me. And so, like, there's things that coincidences that just happen. There, at one point, in all of this and starting my business and struggling and really not knowing what to do. Um, I mean, there's destructive ways that we self medicate, and I did the same thing. And I was just praying and hoping for somebody to give me some insight or some guidance on how to work out of this, how to, like, what is the path forward, what is the path out of this. And coincidentally, I find an ad on Instagram actually, and a guy he just came on there and he's like, this is what I helped men with. I helped them with this. I helped them with emotional stuff. And like the emotional thing, like really, really clicked with me because I had just been thinking about it like the week or two before. And so I actually purchased his online course, his mentorship, and I went through all of that. And within that, there is, like a lot of reflection and figuring out a lot of those like limiting self beliefs. But there's also kind of like the look into the future of like, let's actually be intentional about where we're going. And so with that, like he took us through an exercise of, write down the the 10 people that you look up to the most in life. And then he's like, I want you to write down 3 things that you admire about each one of those people, like the 3 things that you admire the most. And then like I want you to kind of see where are the similarities, where do they kind of like overlap, and I want you to start writing affirmations that like he's like the reason that you do resonate with what they're talking about, or like there's certain qualities, is because like that's who God actually made you to be, and like you're connecting with them on a soul level. Like there is a person inside of you that actually, or there's a being, there's a person, there's a version of you that exists already that actually has all of the qualities that you admire in other people. And that's why you resonate with them. That's why you actually enjoy being around them. Or that's why you want to be like them, is because that's actually like who you are on a soul level. And that was like one of the main exercises that really stood out to me, and kind of like got me started into looking at like what is my actual calling, like what am I supposed to do, like what does God want me to do. And there's also some other exercises that we went through, and one of the coaches in that program was actually just telling some of us there that were going through it. He was like, there's something that you know that you probably should do that that you haven't been doing. And like, when are you going to do it? Like, you think you're going to start it next month. You think you're going to start it in 6 months. You might even think you're going to start it in a year. But like, why are you not just going to get off of this call right here, right now? And why are you not just going to go do it? Because you know that you should do it. And it's been, you've been thinking about it. It's been bugging you for a while. And that thing for me was actually like a podcast is something that I wanted to do. Is something that I didn't necessarily like. I knew that I'd be fairly good at it. I knew that I should probably do it, but it was something that I didn't necessarily want to put myself out there like that, because I got criticized in the past for being a show off or trying to like hog too much of the attention for myself. And so I was just like, not something I'm going to do. But for me, like when my coach said that, like it clicked for me. And I actually went and I started a podcast. And this is like kind of like where the spiritual side starts to actually turn into more of the career side. Is within all of that, kind of my goal for the whole podcast was to help younger people get started with entrepreneurship, just because of like what it did for me on a spiritual level. Like it exposed so many things about me that I didn't know about myself, and I wanted that for young people. Like I wanted them to have purpose, I wanted them to have drive, and I wanted them to get on this journey of like self-discovery, and to ultimately discover like why they were made, and like why they were created, and what they were on this earth to do. And so my goal was to start that, to build a following there, and like to eventually hold like live in-person events, because that is something that I actually do enjoy. And so I started this podcast, I get started with all of this, and this was probably about a little over a year ago that I started the podcast. And one of my friends was kind of running on a parallel path at that point. He was looking to get into public speaking, to get into some like time management type of coaching, things like that. He had like an online course and stuff that he was working on. And he actually invited me. He's like, hey, I want you to come to an event with me in LA. And I was like, at this point, like I have no money, no extra money. And I was like, okay, yeah, it sounds fun. Like I would love to do it, but I'll ask my wife. That was pretty much just me passing the buck on, and like ask the wife. She says no, we can't afford it, and I'll just go back and tell my friend, we can't afford it. My wife said. But I called up my wife. I was like, hey, Nick wants to take me to LA. He's got an extra ticket to this event. All I got to do is pay for my airplane ticket down there. He said I can crash on his hotel room floor, you know. And she's like, I was like, I asked my wife, I said, what do you think? And she goes, um, she goes, yeah, do it. And I said, what? She's like, yeah, do it. I was like, okay, but what? I was like, I did not expect that. She said, well, I feel like there's somebody down there in LA that you might need to meet. Like maybe it's somebody for the podcast or something like that. And so I was like, cool. Like I love to travel. I did a lot of it when I was younger. And so let's travel. And so I bought the ticket, went down there to LA, and the event was amazing. Had a great time, learned a lot of stuff about like self-development, things like that. But at the event, I think it was like lunchtime. We went out, we got Panera bread, came back, ate our sandwiches, and we were kind of waiting for the doors to open for us to get back into the event. And I just turn around, and this guy is basically like standing right behind me, and he walks up to me, and like we shake hands, and like, hey, what's your name? His name's Connor. And I told him my name, and we kind of like got to talking back and forth. And he's a very, very good conversationalist. And so we talked a little bit back and forth, and I gave him one of my business cards. And then we talked a little bit after the event, but then that was pretty much it. So I flew home, and this guy texted me, Connor is his name, and he was basically like, hey, let's set up a meeting. Like, I just want to see what you're up to, see what you're doing. And and so we did. And he actually, like, we had a couple calls, and we just talked about life and entrepreneurship and podcasting and like what all I was working on, the things that I were like important to me. And anyway, and he's like, well, actually, like, I'm actually looking for people to help me with my business. And he was in the financial services business. And he's like, why don't we talk about that? Or why don't I actually show you what we're doing? And so we went through kind of the process. He showed me a lot of like what he's got going on. And yeah, I was door dashing at the time to kind of like pay the bills. And I was just like, anything is going to be better than door dashing. And so that's kind of how I got started in the whole financial services industry. Obviously, that's been a whole new experience because I have no background in financial anything. And so it's just been a lot of learning, a lot of growing in all of those different areas. But the thing that I like the most about it is obviously I met Connor at like a self-development event, and the people that I work with there are very, very focused on like the things that we're talking about here and now, like things that like your calling, the things that you were designed to do, the things that you want to do. And like the group of people that I work with, they're just some of the best people that I've met. Um, they're very, very giving. They're very, a lot of times we actually talk about spiritual things on like business calls and stuff like that. And it's just a great, great environment to be in. And all of that, Terea, came from my wife giving me the go ahead to go to LA because there was somebody that you might need to meet there. And it's like, I look at that and I'm like, coincidence? I don't think so. I really, really don't think so. And like, there's been times that like, obviously, getting started in something that you've never really done before, like there's a lot of growing, a lot of learning that you have to do. And there's been some tough times with what I do now. And like, there's been times I've wanted to quit. Like, I'll just admit it. But I always think back to how I got started. Like, I don't think short of like an act of God, I don't think that connection even is made. Like I can't look at it any other way. Like I I just never I don't see myself viewing that in any other way other than just like an act of God. But that's kind of like how the spiritual thing started, but then it kind of like translated over into my career And honestly, I really, really love what I do, because with what I do, I get paid to be people's friends. Um, and it's just a great place to be in.
What your wife was saying, like, go, it's not, definitely not coincidence. She was hearing from the higher realms of the connections, what the connections that you needed to continue in your process in the spiritual growth. And so in the discovery, definitely sounds like you're meeting some cosmic family, soul family connections there. And and yeah, and if you surround yourself more with other like-minded individuals, you'll start seeing how you relate to them, whether they're your cosmic brother or cosmic sister. Like, I know you're my cosmic brother, and resonates a lot with what you're saying. And so that's what usually happens with our soul family in this discovery process of pursuing that calling and really go in that direction. And then we attract our other soul families, soul spiritual families in that circle within us as we build a frequency, and those frequencies of other individuals resonate to that, and we respond more. And so when it comes to this angle of your connections with the other worlds of outside of your family, you've connected with the other frequencies of higher connections to help you wake up in that journey. So does it feel like your wife is going in that same journey with you as well as you're discovering yourself?
I think that I got started in that whole process before she did. I made the mistake of, like, if I look back on it now, I see that, like, maybe I should have encouraged some of that, like, in her, at least, growing together as much as possible. I know everybody's journey is different and people are dealing with different stuff. And so processes are going to take longer for this person versus that person. And there's just, some of that nuance that you have to pay attention to. But like something that um, a guy I know, a very wise guy, he told us, like, in your self-development journey, you actually need to include your spouse, because if you don't grow together, you grow apart. And what happens when people grow apart is, like, marriages end in divorce, friendships break up. Like, you need to grow together. And so, um, looking back on it now, I should have included my wife a lot more in that, and, like, encouraged that, or maybe tried to lead her to some of that. But I feel like it's something that she's seeing the changes that have been happening to me over the last 2 3 years, and, like, I think that it encourages her, and it's something that she also wants for herself. And so there is, I feel like, steps being made toward getting started on that journey for herself as well.
Well, it's definitely is more beautiful, a beautiful journey and a process when you include your significant other, especially one that you're married to, because with that you carry, I mean, in a Christian background, you still have that God as your center foundation to keep the marriage going. And then by having your spouse, you're moving it to the next level of being a really power couple in the unit as a pair in God. And it's true when it comes to just the growing process as we have this evolvement of the soul continues to grow. If the spouse is not on the same path with you, you do end up growing apart.
Yeah. And I think that God, especially for me in my experience, like, I mean, I've never audibly heard the voice of God, but, like, just with my wife telling me, you need to go to LA this weekend. I don't know why. You just need to go. And also, just, like, maybe even a friend that you talk to on a regular basis, a good friend that challenges you, or maybe brings up something in your life that's not right. you know, a lot of times those things make us angry or we don't understand them. But for me, like reflecting on those things and like really thinking through what my friend said, what's going on in my life currently, like I really, really believe that that is, how God speaks to us is through people a lot of times. And to like with what you were saying, like it's only me and God. I just need God, right? It's that's very, very arrogant, number one. And like number two is like I think that God uses all aspects of our life to speak to us. And a lot of times, for me, that comes through family and friends.
Definitely, because God is in all of us. The aspect of God is living within us. So it is God within God, teaching God how to grow and evolve as one God. Does that make
Mm,
sense? There's like this multi-dimensional realities of who God is, and God has bestowed himself in different parts and creatures and whatnot in this reality in this third dimension. But then there's other multi-dimensional realities that God exists, but in this reality we're working and growing together as a family.
I did have some questions because like there's things that you keep talking about, and I don't know if anybody that I know is going. I don't know if they're going to listen to this, but I think that some of the people, my friend group, would like some clarifications on some of these things, just so it's like clear. If that's okay, if I ask you a few questions.
Yeah, yeah.
You talk about like starseed. I think you keep saying like what exactly do you mean by that?
When a person says that they're a star seed, it's mostly a genetics that we have from other universes, other planets. And so when a person comes down here and feels as if they're a star seed, they feel as if their soul came from another universe and another planet, not this one. So it's more like of other lives that we've had, of other dimensions, of other planets. Uh, for like a new soul, this would be their first life. So, but a new soul can have genetics from other planets, but not have experiences in lives when it comes to like reincarnation and
Mhm.
past lives. So their soul, this is their first life. Um, but they can feel like a star seed, but they're having memories of their ancestors from other planets. And
Gotcha.
so when it comes to the difference of a star seed and an old soul, there's different levels of old souls, like going through different grade schools. And so I like a new soul would be like more like in kindergarten stage. And so as we evolve in different planets and different lives, those are become eventually old souls because they've been around the block so many
Hmm.
times. And so when you see somebody who is really into like say animals and they they connect well with animals and they can understand the animal, that is more than aspect of like, and then they become a veterinarian. Their families and friends may say that they're really good at it and they're natural born, so on and so forth. That's more of a starseed trait because they've had of other lives of connecting with the animals. Because
So like to dumb it down for somebody that's brand new, that's kind of like maybe starseed. It would be kind of like maybe from a different planet or coming from a different place, almost like a previous existence coming from a different place to like your life here on Earth now. Am I understanding that correctly?
Mhm.
Okay. Okay, but like when you're talking about like the age of souls, like you're saying like there's new souls and then there's old souls, there's different levels to all of this different like does that just come through like a lifetime? Is kind of like moving up to the next level of I guess the what you called kind of like a grade in school or something like that. Does it take like a lifetime, or can somebody maybe speed up that process by let's say, meditation or deep spiritual work that can kind of like speed up that process? Because it sounds like old souls would be more aware of like spiritual things, the spiritual realm, what's going on in that realm. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. When it comes to the the old soul aspect of speeding up the process, it's more in our relationship with God. Our relationship with God and the aspect of where humility and being vulnerable and transparency and so just because a person is a starseed doesn't necessarily mean that they're more highly intellectually in the wisdom aspect of understanding life, because there's a lot of arrogance in that area too, because as you can see, when it comes to those who claim who are starseed, they've also gone into the other end of the spectrum of claiming that they're gods, and they're claiming that they are much higher into ascension of discovering that God is within them, but because God is within them, they can be as gods. But we're
Mm.
children of God, and there's a hierarchy within. Go through that process, because if we take ourselves away from that hierarchy, we're basically a different form of rebellious nature of Lucifer, of taking ourselves away from that divine plan, of that divine pattern of order, of where it comes to eldership and when it comes to hearing God and what we need to do. So as a star seed, it's like if we're going to go into that meditative state or go deep into spirituality, that we need our family and we need elders, those who have gone before us. There's always somebody ahead of us who knows more, but it's not so much about the knowing more. It's more about um, your because say when you're in this contemplation mode and you're studying in this study mode process, you'll be able to hear all those information as what a person when is more highly ascended, you'll be able to hear all that information also, because they're tapping into the source, into God, into the source. Some people call it as Akashic records, and some people call it as just the ethereal, the ethers of the information library. It's basically like frequencies, but it's more of just as one tunes in and really centers themselves in alignment with God, they're able to become and activated on all levels of their body and spirit cells, is activation that they're able to hear from God.
Mm.
Um, so there's really no like shortcut to speed up the process
Yeah.
because like some people will go into like say they're stuck on their religion, and they'll say, well, I or another person will say they're an atheist and all they want to do is be good to make the next chapter in their life or so forth. Or if they think that there's more than other lives than this one, all they need to do is be a good steward for humanity. But it's
Mm.
really our relationship with one another and relationship with God. Because if we don't have that relationship, because like how in the Bible it says to know God, to get to God is through me, Jesus.
Mm.
So without that relationship with Jesus, we're not going to go to the higher dimension world if we don't have a relationship and understand with where we're at in the hierarchy of things. And so when it comes to just understanding one's ascension process and the growth process, there's all these concepts that we believe in this life that we're in, and people are taking away the angle of reincarnation and angles of other lives that we've had to go into, because we're in this life because we didn't finish that lesson in another life, per se.
Mhm.
Like the husband, he lost himself in drugs in the 60s. So now he's in this life, but he lost himself in addiction of chasing money. And so Jesus told him he needed to slow himself down. Um, he's basically disabled. And so it's helped the husband in many ways of the lessons that he's learning on how to slow down. And slowing down is more on the connection and building that relationship with Jesus. Because everything out here is such an addiction. There's a lot of distractions, I mean. And even people who practice manifestation tools or witchcraft, it's all part of manifestation tools is part of witchcraft in the modern era of where we're at now. It's the new term manifestation is basically witchcraft. If you're addicted to that, anything can be witchcraft. Um, so all these tools to speed up the process to manifest or to get to the where you want to get it's not in the long term. We're not going to get there um, fast, and if we speed it up, because in the long term process we're still going to be put back in like base one, stage one, and relearn the whole process and understand that we can't use all these other tools and whatnot, distractions. We got to do it more in a organic way and natural way in that relationship connection with God. And we'll go through like different epiphanies, like a person who's like really into yoga and they'll be into meditation tools and they'll be like they had an epiphany or like they're going to this higher level of like yoga is really bad for you. Just stay away from yoga. And it's like you're gonna get distracted. You're not gonna have a relationship with God if you stick to that form. It's just like, but anything in life, there's a balance to things. So does
Yeah.
that help?
Yeah. Yeah. There's another question that I had with you said like manifesting things is witchcraft. And you'd also mentioned about um, like being a star seed or something like that. Uh, with that being very closely tied to being a witch or something like that along those lines. I forget exactly how you said that. But like manifesting is witchcraft. Like, could you explain that a little bit? Like what you mean by witchcraft?
Witchcraft is mainly the way I see it is more of when you speed things to manifest in your favor versus allowing the universe to work with you and bring in a timely manner, in a timely space where things happen serendipitously and it happens for a reason. So like with manifestation tools, there's like the subliminals. Like some people will get really into subliminals and they'll listen to, I want to manifest this house. And so they're going to listen to a subliminal to program their mind in their sleep or while they're doing something. And then as they're doing something, it's more like a cheat sheet, cheat sheet to get to that, to have that house that they want. And so in manifesting that and um, having that trust in a subliminal programming the mind is no different than self hypnotism. Subliminals is just more subconscious, but hypnotism is more conscious. It's still the fast process to obtain, like say, hypnotists will hypnotize you to get rid of your lower animalistic behaviors, like if you want to stop smoking, versus really working on your internal growth of going that process of weaning yourself out of not being addicted to smoke. Um, to cigarettes, whatnot. So it's the same thing like with subliminals, if they to manifest what they want, and they are always struggling, say financially. So then they listen to a subliminal, and then all of a sudden they receive, I don't know, a couple $100 or a couple $1,000 to meet their deadline for their bill. And then they will turn into subliminal again if they're struggling financially with another area in their life, or they're struggling with a friendship or a loved one, and they turn. That is a form of witchcraft, because the person continues. It's an addiction to go to that area. All these forms of manifestation tools to make oneself life easier and to get to that destination faster, or the results where they want to go. It's replacing all these other tools as gods.
So to dumb it down to, this is like a really dumbed down version, but it's basically trying to make things happen, using these tools to make things happen on your own time instead of waiting for God to do it on His time.
Yes, correct. Like
Okay.
in a more simple version is using all these tools in this 3D world to make things happen for your own gratification, versus when God wants you, because you need to learn all these other lessons first.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. And I think that's all the questions I have. So we can get back to the regular scheduled programming.
No, no, that was really good. It's like it helps me understand where others are at too when they're watching or listening to these podcasts. Like discussions like this, and like when I've gone to deeper discussions with other individuals, I've noticed that there's more people, the audience is watching those times more. So it is more of an interest for the audience to know these types of questions,
Yeah.
topics to get into. So yeah, so when it comes to anything in life, we just need to work on our relationship to, or else we're going to continue having that next life and go back into that next, I don't know, chapter, and it'll be like hundreds of years for individual soul to learn that lesson too, if they need to, before they move on. Probably off the topic, but
And so, okay, I do have another question now. You talked about like the ascension process. When someone completes that process, like, is that when they arrive to, you said like the mansion city or like heaven, whatever you want to call it? Is that kind of like the completion of the ascension process?
there's a lot of definitions, terminologies, definitions based with where one is at in their awakening of what ascension process looks like. But based with where the studies I've gone through and understood, the ascension process is it's an ongoing evolutionary soul process. And so like the mansion world is just like we live in a third dimension, and then there's the next dimension, which is the fourth, and then the fifth, and so forth. As we go higher, we're actually moving into different dimensions of hierarchy within their spiritual realm. Like in scripture, it says the mansion world, that there's many mansions in God's kingdom or God's heaven. It's the different mansions, like going down to planet Earth. Earth is the physical realm, is 3D. It's transitioning with other alignments of planets in this universe. Like this summer, the planets are going to be, I think like 7 planets will be in alignment for the first time in a long time. And that type of alignment brings the Earth into a higher dimension and frequency where there's going to be a lot of earth changes, because the earth itself is organic, it's alive also, and so it's gonna transition with the souls on the planet, and the Earth is, according to the Urantia book, and other people who have had near-death experiences and who communicated with Jesus, Earth is in a transition and process of becoming a mansion world. It's transitioning into higher frequencies and higher dimensions and realities. Once it reaches that level, it'll be where we won't even need the sun, because Earth will be evolving in a way where the light will have its light from the souls, which are resonating the brightness of like the sun, because we're all growing together. This planet is still in the third, fourth stage of light and life. So we're gonna just, based with where our like knowledge, according to the Urantia book and other sources out there, based with what our knowledge and our spiritual growth is, we'll go to the next planet that is of a higher grade than Earth. So that planet is just another mansion world, and then transitioning from that planet, we'll go to the next planet or the next universe. It just keeps moving higher and higher. So then when it comes to the ascension process, like if it ever ends, I don't think it will ever end, because even God himself is evolving, even though God is absolute and God is still like, he is already is. There's a part of him that's evolving with us, because there's a fragment of God in everyone. So he's in a way learning himself.
I don't know if I've ever dove into the subject this deep or like talked to somebody about it in this way. So this is I mean, I've heard some of those terms before, but definitely hearing a lot of new terms.
Going back to your spiritual growth and your destiny in discovering that, and your wife really taking that angle and wanting to grow with you and discovering herself. It sounds like that she's a starseed old soul.
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, it's the first time I've heard a lot of these terms, so I don't know that I could correctly assess that.
Mm-hmm. So in your processes in this journey as an entrepreneurship, what have you learned to really help your clients? Do you go on the angle of also teaching them not just financial aspect of it, but do you also like connect with them with their soul and go on the angle of spirituality, or do you?
If it goes there, like you said, like some people just aren't. I mean, the thing about finance is like finances are very intimate subject for a lot of people. And so in order to talk about those types of things, most of the time you need to know them or have like somewhat of a relationship with them. And so like there definitely is a process that I go through with people that I meet, that like I definitely want to get to know them before we dive into like any type of business type of stuff. Sometimes, I mean, sometimes it does go to spiritual discussions, um, and spiritual, like their spiritual life, my spiritual life, talking along those types or about that type of stuff. But it's not necessarily something that I'm going to push or ask them about, but it does come up from time to time.
And what are your like nudges that you experience when it comes to conversing in that angle, that you know that you're in the right direction, continuing that um, conversation?
I would say that, I mean, if there's something that we're discussing in conversation and there's something that maybe I've learned for myself, when it comes to my spiritual life or with experiences that I've had, um, maybe revelations that I've had through whatever that is, like reflection or just thinking about life. Um, if there's some value that I can give to them when it comes to like spiritual aspects, like I am willing and I'm ready to talk about that type of stuff. And I usually just provide uh, my experience, what happened to me, and what I see, the lesson that I learned from that experience. And if they're willing to like pick up that conversation and keep the conversation moving on the spiritual level, then like we'll do that. But if it's not something that they want to talk about, then usually just turn the conversation back to whatever we were talking about before.
And like when it comes to your spiritual life and self-discovery within the last 3 years, what differences have you noticed in how you live your life? And like mentally, emotionally, even especially even after that course that you took online, what are the differences that you see yourself, that transition that you could help the audience discover for themselves?
It just opened up like a realm of possibilities that I didn't necessarily think were ever going to be possible for me. There's a lot of like a lot of just basic truths that you learn. And I forget if it was Plato or Socrates said like one of the greatest lesson that somebody can learn is not a new lesson, but something that they learned previously. I'm paraphrasing that a little bit, but like that's definitely like through the past couple of years kind of been on the spiritual journey, kind of been learning and things like that. There's definitely just been things that like are kind of cliche or people talk about them a lot, talk about them in certain ways, but like until you experience some of these things or until you go through certain uh, experiences in your life, like they're just not, they don't really make sense to you. Um, they don't really resonate with you at all. Because like you always think growing up, like, oh, if I had a nicer car and a nicer house and a nicer all this and that and the other thing, like then I would be happy. But that's not even necessarily the goal. Like the whole thing with entrepreneurship is yes, you can make more money and you might be able to buy a nicer house and you might be able to buy a nicer car. But like one of the biggest lessons that I've learned is to actually be content with where I'm currently at, not waiting or like being happy with where I'm currently at, not trying to wait till I accomplish all of these different things or not trying to wait till I have this amount of money to be happy. It's like God placed me in this specific place for a specific reason. I'm going through this. I don't know why at this point, but like I just trust and I have faith that um, at some point in life, I'm going to be able to help somebody else with this experience, with this hardship, with what I'm currently going through. And so just learning to take those things in stride, to be happy, even when things aren't necessarily going your way. Um, I believe that everything does happen for a reason, and we can't connect the dots looking forward. We can only connect the dots looking backward and kind of like see where God's hand was in specific places in guiding us into specific things. And so, like looking back at how my wife said, you need to go to LA. Like I was like, I was down there maybe looking for podcast guests. And here, my actual future career was actually why I went to LA. And so just learning to be happy, just learning to be happy in every stage of life, whether it's exactly where you want to be or not, is something that's like one of the powerful lessons that I've learned through just like reflection, being aware, um, and just working on oneself.
Yeah, when it comes to just the timing of it, and where we need to be in life, because there's also not just that one destination where we can go to, but there's multifaceted of other angles, paths that we can go to. Is that how you like process things at times in life? Like when it comes to you meeting Connor and thinking like what would have happened if you didn't go there, and what would have the choices that you would have made, and the life that what would have happened with your marriage or your kids, or like would they have been born? Have they been delayed? Um, what goes on in your mind when it comes to the awakening process of in your next chapter in growing in God?
Yeah, I don't know that I've really thought a lot about that of like if some of these things wouldn't have happened, like where would my life be and what would that look like? Um, I haven't really thought a lot about that.
That's
I
probably a good thing.
at this point, like I'm just super grateful that the things that have happened to me did happen to me. Like I'm happy that I married my wife because, you know, one of the best people that I know, most long suffering and caring people that I know. I'm glad that I met Connor because he's helped me grow so much, not just in career or anything like that, but just like personally and spiritually and mentally. He's helped me grow. And um like yeah, I don't know. I guess I haven't really processed through that or like tried to like see myself in a different situation where I'm not married to my wife or where I'm not doing what I'm doing for a job and trying to envision that. I usually try to envision what I do want for the future, not what I don't have.
Yeah, that's actually a good thing. You're just knowing that you are mostly like staying in the moment and then seeing the future of what the goals that you can reach. It really shows that you are very grateful and really acknowledge in your life how blessed you are, and you're not like backtracking like, oh, I could have done this differently and I could have the and because then it's more like you said, there's the two angles of seeing life, whether it's a half glass full or half glass empty, and pursuing that, and in a higher light, you're gonna draw and attract more clients in your direction. So thank you for sharing your experiences and your life journey and your self-discovery, and just really awesome that you're able to connect with me. And thank you again for providing even those questions on the audience that may have questions on when it comes to especially building the course that I'll be providing soon. But thank you. And also, people can reach you on Instagram, and I'll provide that handle and in the description of the video. And is there anything that you want for the audience to know, like when it comes to what you're looking for in a client, or what you're looking for when it comes to networking and individuals that you want to connect with? They have to be spiritually awakened. No, just kidding.
Um, no, not necessarily. Um, we really do a lot of things in kind of like middle America because with a lot of financial advisors, um, if you don't have $250,000 or if you don't have $500,000, a lot of them are just kind of like, well, come back when you do have the money. And so, kind of our main goal, our main mission is to serve middle America and um, to be there to provide some guidance and some very, very good education for the people that maybe don't have those types of resources to invest. And so, I mean, really, like we cover the whole spectrum of personal finance, but I mean, it really doesn't have to be like one. Like we service a wide variety of demographics and people and income. Uh, how much income people make doesn't really make that much of a difference. Like, we can service pretty much anybody, but I'm not necessarily looking for like just one specific people, except for like somebody that's going to be willing to at least have a discussion, to learn, and to not be. I've talked to several people that have been very, very egotistical. Like, I know everything there is to know about money. Okay, I can't really help you with education if you don't see a need for it. So that would probably be one of the stipulations there. We can
And
still be
you,
friends. I'll talk to you. We can have a good discussion, but it just probably won't be around money or things that you think that you know everything about. So
thank you for again for joining me here and for presenting what you were able to in the moment. And thank you for those beacons of light for joining us this far and for really pass on the word for to your family and friends and colleagues that need to know the information, especially those who are struggling and really want to know more about the higher consciousness of that mind, body, and soul. And hope you have a great rest of the day. And thank you again for joining us here at Norris and Beaconsfield. Bye-bye.